Hello, everyone, and welcome to Different Stages Radio. I'm your host, JJ, broadcasting from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And on today's show, we have for you from Juno Award-winning band Ancients, who are about to release their long-awaited third album, Beyond the Reach of the Sun, on August 30th on Season of Mist Records. Please welcome my guest, Kenny Cook. How are you, Kenny?
I am doing very well, JJ. How about yourself?
I'm doing well, thank you. You look very well. You full summer?
I'm surviving. Yeah.
Living the dream?
Recently lost the beard.
I was
Yeah.
about to say, yeah, but pretty slick. Pretty slick.
It's coming back strong.
Oh, yeah. You'll want in the winter, I'm sure.
Yeah, you bet.
Lighten the load for summer a bit.
Oh yeah. I've been working in a death pit, and it's like 45 degrees down there, like doing some concrete work. And yeah, I was like, I've had enough of this shit. I'm taking it off.
Good for you. But still
yeah.
slick. You still look good.
Oh, we're surviving.
You're surviving. Awesome. So let's dive into the new album, Beyond the Reach of the Sun. I've heard a few tracks. Well, I've actually heard it all, but I've really soaked in the first three singles more than the rest because I just got the whole thing dropped on my lap this week. Great record. 8 years since Voice of the Void. Lots gone on since that album. You had some family issues. You had a new baby, which is awesome. Chris leaving the band. Oh,
A whole smorgasbord.
Like all of us dealing with COVID. Do you feel that those challenges that you were dealt with are hopefully behind you, or does it feel like 8 years to you since Voice of the Void?
Yeah, well, first off, like all that bullshit's finally done and dealt with, so that's it's an amazing feeling. Yeah, it doesn't obviously feel like 8 years. It almost feels like yesterday. It was all kind of just a whirlwind of bullshit. But we're kind of past it now and just kind of have our eyes set on the path ahead.
Because it seems you're getting some pretty good steam and talk and rumblings about this new record, because it's a thick, dense, like I love the dynamics, I love the space, I love the harmonies, some great melodies. But then at the same time, reading about how you had started on a record after Voice of the Void and essentially scrapped that and started fresh. Is that correct?
Yeah, like to some degree, like obviously without going into too much detail, like I had my first son born, and my wife ran into heart complications. So that happened kind of right before Voice of the Void was recorded. So basically for the last, or I guess 5 years sort of after Voice of the Void, it was kind of focusing just on family, and making sure everyone was healthy, before we could, start diving back in. So during that time period, like we had been sparsely kind of getting together and writing music, but the rehearsals and stuff were pretty far and few in between. So we have a lot of kind of material that's 3/4 of the way done, or substantial chunks of music that when we kind of sat down and started writing for this record, it was, some of that stuff just starts to feel stale, even though it could be good stuff and maybe something that we'll come back to at another time. But I just felt like it felt better to just start fresh from with the lineup we have now, and just have sort of a clean slate to start building foundations upon. So yeah, there's a substantial chunk of kind of music that sort of just got thrown to the wayside for the time being anyways.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, because that was going to be one of my questions. Like, is it completely gone, or is it just kind of put aside that you will potentially revisit at some point with fresh ears and maybe need some tweaking, some readjustments, and perhaps that could be, new ideas for the next record?
Yeah, totally. And like there's a couple ideas that we may have cherry picked for the new record, but as far as like a full cohesive thing, like yeah, there's a lot of stuff, and actually with our other guitarist Brock, like I'm living in the Shuswap now, so I'm kind of 4 hours out of Vancouver. Um, but he was up here. We were kind of working on some music and hanging out. We started kind of going through this vast amount of stuff that we had, and there is some really kind of cool stuff in there, right? That now when you listen back after some of it was in 2017, so it's funny kind of listening to that stuff. Like, whoa, that's pretty tasty. We should click the favorite button on that, right? Right. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, like so we have a bit of a treasure trove we can kind of dig through, right? But as far as the new material, I felt it was kind of best just to put our heads down and kind of go with the flow that we were sort of feeling at the time, right?
Nice. And you mentioned Brock and also Rory new to the band. What can you tell us about
Yeah.
Brock and Rory and what they bring to Ancients?
Well, first of all, Brock, like I met Brock like I guess it was probably around 2015. Like I'd known him from the scene, but not really on like a personal level. And a mutual friend of ours, Gord, that used to live in Vancouver, he put together this cover band for like a Pentagram cover band and asked me to come out. So that's kind of where we sort of initially met. And then we ended up doing like a Rocky Erickson cover band as well with
Nice.
sort of the same group of guys. And then after that, we did like a sort of a Southern rock kind of, I don't know, old school countryish kind of vibe band. I was really into like Charlie Daniels at the time. Like some of those old records are pretty wild.
No doubt.
Um, so yeah, we kind of met through that. And he's just like an amazing musician, and our chemistry between each other is amazing, right? Like we can bounce ideas off each other, and he's just kind of one of those guys that you can be like, oh, try this, and he's kind of got it right away, right? So um yeah, he actually filled in for Chris. We did a tour with Intronaut, I think in 2015. So he actually came on a run with us. When Chris decided to depart, he was like all of our first choice right away. We were super happy to have him. So yeah, that's Brock and Rory. He played in a group called Bushwhacker that was kind of local to Vancouver, and we had done some shows with them before. But like right before we were going into the studio, like a month, like Mike Hannay, our drummer, Brock, and myself, we'd kind of been demoing like crazy. And because I moved away, like the whole foundations of this record were kind of all done remotely pretty much. So we were building these songs, and our old bassist Boone, he just had twins, and his business was kind of erupting on Bowen Island. So I think he was trying to hold on for dear life, but just life kind of got in the way, right? So it was basically like a month until we were booked to go in the studio that Boone kind of decided it probably wasn't right. So for the time being, like me and Brock were just playing the bass on the demos and kind of you know having placeholders set that we just did just to kind of keep things moving forward. Um, and then we actually added like some synths and keys to this record. And our friend Justin Hagberg from 3 Inches of Blood, he did all the keys and synths on the record. So when I sent him some demos and stuff, we found out kind of Boone wasn't going to be moving forward with us. And I was like, yeah, if you kind of know anyone that might be interested in playing bass, please kind of send them our way. And Rory is actually playing in Ritual Dictates with Justin, and he mentioned Rory's name, and I was like, I didn't even think of Rory, right? Like he's a super good dude, an amazing musician. so he kind of like saved our ass at the last minute. I contacted him and was like, yeah, like this is kind of the circumstance. We've got sort of these 10 songs pretty much ready to go, and we've got studio time booked in like under a month. Like, are you willing to jump aboard? And he was totally on board, and he pulled it off. So, Rory, we owe you big time for pulling that together. I can imagine it was probably a fairly daunting task, right? To have to kind of cram all that stuff and play it with some sort of conviction.
Well, it's pretty impeccable
So
timing.
yeah,
So I was wondering if he had a chance to really come up with much of his own grooves, or was it pretty much like you and Brock already had the foundation laid down, and he was pretty much just coming down to play on top of it, or was he able to add some of his own flavor in there?
he certainly added his own vibe to it. Like I say, like the placeholders for us were just to kind of have the idea there of generally what we wanted, kind of as far as the low end and the rhythm was concerned. But he kind of had that month, and it was a good thing we sort of had the demo, so he had the time to kind of listen to sort of what we came up with in a general sense, so to speak. But he certainly added his own fire to the party.
Fits in nicely. And you mentioned Justin, and then of course we can't not mention Jesse Gander, who's done your third record. What can you tell us about Jesse? Like he's becoming a deal. He's a thing. People that don't know,
Yeah,
people out of the Lower Mainland, he's a thing.
He's a huge thing. Like we've aside from our first kind of 2-track EP that we sort of did before we were really even kind of doing shows, he's done everything with us, right? And he's just amazing to work with. He kind of pulls the best performances out of you. He has a lot of great ideas while you're kind of in the mix, like especially vocally. He's just an all-around great guy and just amazing at what he does, right? It's wild to kind of watch him work. Because I know when I'm at home, like trying to engineer or do computer stuff, I'm just like one finger typer as he's just like going crazy, right? So like he's basically the fifth member of the band for sure. And yeah, we always have such a blast and a fun time working with him.
That's awesome because he does seem to be becoming kind of the fourth, fifth, sixth, 10th member of most bands, which is great. So good on Jesse for getting that happening.
Yeah,
that's cool. Wanted to talk about your Bandcamp listening party coming up on August 15th. That's pretty cool. That's a cool idea. And what can you tell people who may not know that? Because we want to get this interview out in time to help pimp said Bandcamp listening party.
Yeah, so Bandcamp kind of just sort of approached us and sort of ran the idea by us to showcase the record in advance to its release, just so the fans can kind of have a listen and maybe be able to hear the record in its whole as a part of just snippets. So yeah, we thought it was a great idea. We sort of spoke with the label and figured, a couple weeks in advance would be a good enough chunk of time where it's not necessarily like 2 days before. So yeah, I think it should be fun, and we'll be there kind of hanging out in the chat room and ready to kind of answer any questions people have about the music or the recording or what we ate for breakfast. Yeah.
Your beard?
Perhaps. Yeah, my beard. Yeah,
the beard.
It's slowly coming back. I'm not sure if it'll be back by then.
all good. But yeah, you mentioned not listening to the album in chunks. So I've done run through twice, and I have to say that in general, I find it's a lost art these days. The album, a 10, 12 track album that flows, that makes sense. Now, I haven't had a chance to dive into the lyrical content of it, but it did feel like there might be a bit of a conceptual feel, or is that just the way it sounded to me? Because it really seems to have this great flow that I find I can immediately take out all the songs and go, these are all great songs. but it's the songs around each song that complement them that just make it brilliant. Like, is it
Yeah, like
a piece?
since like when Chris was in the band, he did a lot of, to some degree, like I kind of just created sort of this sort of short story, like sci-fi kind of idea where this celestial tyrant kind of comes down to a society that was, thriving, and takes over and places these sort of kings to kind of hold and oppress everybody on the planet. And then these people are searching for a way to escape. That's sort of the general concept. And it deals kind of with a lot of darker subjects, just given the amount of shit that I was going through leading up to the release. So it's kind of just, spoken through the eyes of this kind of society. So I just, because Chris used to write like a lot of the lyrics, this was my first kind of time doing the whole thing. So I just found that that was an easy way to, create some sort of vessel to get my ideas across without, you know, having really done it too much before. Like I had written lyrics for songs and in the past, but kind of making one cohesive chunk, I sort of just used that concept as a vessel to get my ideas across.
Which was probably also very therapeutic for you, given all that you had gone through. Would you say? Like, it was almost like
Oh,
a bit of,
sorry, JJ.
no problem. Just saying, did it feel like therapeutic for you, kind of almost a therapy session to be able to get through that on your own after all that you went through too?
Yeah, to some degree. Like I guess it was more so nerve wracking, like trying to come up with something that wasn't too blatant or corny at the same time, right? So, but it was nice to kind of reflect on all that stuff that I'd been through, because when you're kind of in the middle of it, you don't really necessarily pay attention to it closely. So you're just kind of living it, right? The whirlwind. So yeah, it was nice to kind of just reflect on all of that stuff and be thankful that I'm through it now, and everyone's kind of happy and healthy, and
Yeah,
we're you know
yeah, that's no, that's
we're
great. Feeling like a new chapter and a new rebirth for the band. And I'm thinking too that, for most of us, perhaps you as well, you're really getting involved in music and really being influenced and starting to really pay a closer attention to music in your teens. And I'm thinking back just time frame that it has been 8 years since the last record. So there could be people that are now in their mid-teens who they're just hearing about Ancients now. And this for them
mhm.
in many respects is going to be their first Ancients album. This is going to be their album. And I think they've hit something really good. So I look at, and it's fair, when people will, if they're diving into Ancients for the first time and don't know, when you hear the comparisons, the Opeth or the Baroness thrown in there. That's fair, Macedon. That's cool. And I get that. But I did like reading in the bio the references to, of course, Rush, but also Harlequin. I'm like, that's awesome. As a Harlequin
Yeah,
fan too, it's like, that's cool. But I also have to say, with the album closure, which is just bitchin', the in the absence of wisdom, like I
yeah.
said, I'm enjoying the whole record a lot. But that track in particular, I was hearing a fair bit of Alice in Chains vibe, more towards a Jerry Cantrell kind of deal. And are you a fan? Is that a fair observation?
I'm a massive fan. So
Good
I
man, good
kind of,
man.
yeah, I kind of, I felt that with this record, with writing it, like in my formative years as like a guitar player, like when I was 11 or 12, like that kind of, like I just sort of heard like Nirvana for the first time. I remember when I was 12, and that kind of, set me on this crazy course for all that kind of Seattle sound stuff for probably, a good 5 year span through sort of high school and stuff. And you kind of you branch off into so many other places in music through all sorts of things. And I found like in this gap between these records, I like, not so much for nostalgia purposes, but that was part of it. Like going back to all that music and realizing like, that I love that kind of music so much still, right? And out of all of that, like I think Alice in Chains and Soundgarden are probably like the number ones for me in that period, right? But I think Nirvana kind of started the whole shebang for me, right? Like the first record I got by them was the Unplugged in New York. So it was like I got it at like a flea market with my first CD player. So I played that, and then I went through kind of my dad's collection and found Nevermind, and I was like, "What is this?" Right? And then that kind of just snowballed. So long story long, yeah, like Alice in Chains is a huge part of my musical journey.
That's awesome because yeah, I can definitely hear in those harmonies and just some of those tones. I'm like, it's just so cozy. It's just awesome.
Yeah,
So we want to remind people and let people know though too that you have two big album release shows happening. One in Victoria on September 20th, Victoria, British Columbia, and then one in Vancouver, British Columbia on September 27th at the Rickshaw Theatre. You can get tickets now through
yeah,
stagesradio.com. Also, you're doing a run, a Western Canadian run, going as far as Winnipeg and back through October with Bison, correct?
you got it. Yeah,
Got that? Okay, that's awesome. And then do we have anything kind of simmering for later in winter or perhaps early in the new year?
we've got some ideas cooking. Nothing that I can sort of disclose right now, but we're gonna do our best to try and get out at least once more sometime in November, December. But if not, 2025, we're gonna try and hit everywhere as hard as possible. So we'll do kind of a full North America, and we'll definitely try and get over to Europe again, at least once, but if not more. We're kind of just ready to make up for lost time. So we'll sort of be taking whatever sort of opportunities we can get, providing their feasible ventures.
And the two festivals that you did a few months back, like the Loud as Hell and the what was the other one there? The Electric Highway Festival?
Yeah, well, we just did the Loud as Hell like a
Yeah.
couple days ago,
Yeah, how
so
was that?
it was great. It was my first beardless show ever, I think. Right? I thought I had time. Yeah, we kind of jumped into it with sort of 6 days notice, because I think Malignancy couldn't make it. So Jeff, the promoter of the festival, contacted us, and yeah, we figured it would be something fun to do. So, you know, we're a little out of practice, but the guys came up and we shit kicked some rehearsals for 3 days, and so yeah, the show went great. The festival was ran awesome. Like the day we played, there was an insane torrential downpour, that happened in the middle of the day. So it was like nothing I'd ever seen. It was just lightning, and the whole the whole grounds were like a big puddle within like 10 minutes. It was just unreal. So our set got pushed back by like almost 2 hours. But aside from that, it was great, and people stuck around to check us out, which is always a good thing. So yeah, it was awesome, and a fun little trip to have.
It was truly beyond the reach of the sun, I guess. That was pretty bad, I know.
Yeah, most definitely.
Most def-
And
I know that was pretty bad. Some
yeah,
bad jokes.
yeah.
So yeah, just as we wrap it up, I appreciate you taking the time on Different Stages Radio, and I want to make sure that people know. Please check out Beyond the Reach of the Sun. This is a ridiculous album. Comes out August 30th on Season to Miss Records. Album will be available physical product through Ancients, through you guys directly, or not?
Yeah, like it's so through Season of Mist kind of internationally, and through our Bandcamp. And we have like a band exclusive variant that's limited to 200 copies. that we've kind of been selling through our ancients.net site. So yeah, we've offered to kind of sign the record for fans if they'd want it. So they're getting close to gone. So probably a good time to grab one if you wanted to get one signed by the band.
Good call. And don't forget about the Bandcamp release party on August 15th. And don't forget about the album release show in Victoria on September 20th, as well as the album release show in Vancouver on September 27th, as well as the Western Canadian run with Bison going through October. Sound good?
Great. We are also playing Nanaimo the day after Victoria.
Plug that one. Nanaimo
on the 21st.
21st in Nanaimo.
21st. Yeah.
Can't forget
You
Nanaimo.
got it, man.
Okay.
No.
Time. This is
no.
Kenny Cook. This is Different Stages Radio.